Hello, and welcome to another episode of Leadership Lanes, the podcast where we explore the art and science of leadership in today's dynamic workplace. I'm your host, Abhijit, and today we have an exciting topic that I believe will resonate with leaders and aspiring leaders alike, building effective cultures in organizations. I'm thrilled to announce our guest today, Julie Lee, an expert in organizational culture and leadership development. Julie has been a keynote speaker for a while now, and she shows leaders exactly how to saturate their work culture with human connection to improve their mental health and perform at peak potential. That's pretty important, I feel, these days. Her podcast, I See You, has inspired thousands of listeners to succeed in relationships by embracing human connection. Welcome, Julie.
Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here. Thanks for inviting me on.
Great to have you as well. So, building an effective culture in an organization starts with, I would say, fostering authentic relationships with your team. Now, what do you think? How can leaders go about creating those genuine connections?
Well, for me, I really learned this from the ground level. When I was 21, I had a mental breakdown at work and I had a leader I was under some really toxic leadership and I had a leader that stepped in and humanized it. And so some of the things I talk about in my keynote, the connected leader, are really the things that I learned from her and from watching and researching leaders. And I found that there are three things that when leaders do this, their people want to stay, they feel valued, and also, they make them more money. And those things are feeling seen, feeling appreciated, and feeling trusted. So those are really the three that I speak on and that I train on is helping your people first feel seen, then helping them feel appreciated or valued, and then helping them feel like they're trusted and that there's a trusting relationship there. Those are really the three that we focus on here at ICU Leadership and have found effective in the way people lead and in making sure that their people feel like they're connected, they belong, and when we belong, we want to stay. Because I mean, someone once said, I don't know who it is. It seems like one of my friends has said this in their book. So I apologize, I'm not giving the credit, but the idea that people don't leave jobs, they leave bosses, right? People will stay at a job they don't love if they have a boss that they do love very often. It has so much to do with that human relationship.
That's so true, actually, and that makes a lot of sense, to be honest. And I can totally resonate with that as well. Moving on to the broader picture, right? I mean, you talked about being seen, you talked about feeling valued. Uh, how can leaders build a thriving work culture where employees start feeling valued or empowered?
Yeah, well, I think I just those three statements. I see you, I appreciate you, I trust you. There's different tools that I teach and things that I often discuss with leaders of how to do this. Some specific ones that I've seen be really effective, well researched, and I've experienced in my own life. Kind of how you talked about you've experienced the difference in having a connected leader and one that's not. First of all, feeling seen, you talking to people with using their first name is a big deal. It's a big deal. Often my background is actually as an elementary school teacher, and we learned and would watch the brain scan of what happens to a kid's brain when they're called by their first name, and it just lights up like a Christmas tree. Adults, our brains are no different. So calling people by their first name is a big way to make people feel seen. There's some brilliant research out there of how to make conversations about others and not focused on yourself in the conversation of learning how to ask questions, of learning how to connect before you try to relate. Appreciating has everything to do with the way we see people. I often in my workshop I see you we go through this transition from first seeing and then appreciating, and a big part of that is when we see people we can often see them in black and white and in absolutes, good or bad, wrong or right, lazy, productive. We make them absolutes, but really as we strive to see people, what I like to think in color, which is as complicated human beings, and we have compassion on them, we connect with them, then we're really able to start having a vision where we default to their strengths. So when we talk about I appreciate you and gratitude and this idea that gratitude begets momentum, being able to point out and highlight people's strengths. I've seen that done in all sorts of different ways in corporations. It can be in a company meeting, highlighting an employee. You can have something on the wall. It could be in the gifts that you give. It can be in personal notes. Highlighting what they're good at is a big way to make your people feel appreciated. Making your compliments super specific to their skill set, to what makes them unique, is a big way to not just make them feel seen, but feel appreciated and valued as well. I like to think of feeling seen has so much to do, I think, with just that every individual in your corporation has worth. Being appreciated is showing the value that they bring to the table. So everybody has worth. Everyone should feel seen regardless, but to feel like you bring value to the corporation, to the organization, I think is where we really show our appreciation for the skill set that our people have. So yeah, make it super specific, the compliments, and find opportunities to highlight people for their strength, both privately and publicly. Some of that can depend on their personality and how well you know their team. Some people value being praised publicly differently than others, but and then I think really the third level is then I trust you. And with I trust you, how do we make people feel like we trust them? A big piece of this is authenticity and vulnerability as a leader. I don't know about you, but I often notice leaders being very willing to give help, but not always receive help. And unfortunately, in an organization and in a corporation, we've seen that makes people not trust the relationship as much because, for an example, if there's a leader who says, yes, it's okay to take PTO. It's good to take mental health days, take some self-care time to go on vacation with your family, but they never do it for themselves and their own family. It is really hard for their employees to really feel like it's okay for them to do it, right? There's a gap in the trust there. For a leader to for the employees to really feel like they're trusted and the leader trusts them, they have to practice what they preach. So if they see asking or needing help or needing PTO as a weakness and that's what they embody, that's going to catch on to their people, and their people are going to feel like it's a weakness to actually do that if they don't practice what they preach. I think trust has so much to do with staying authentic as a leader and being willing to share their stories with their people, being willing to share their need for PTO, their need for human connection, their need for help from their people. Accepting help from your people, I think, is one of the most undervalued tools you can use as a leader, is learning to ask for help, not just accept it, but ask for help from your people. And it creates an incredible amount of trust between the leader and the followers.
That's a very interesting take actually, because I mean, in one of our courses that Professor Douglas itself was teaching us, they taught us about authenticity and showing vulnerability uh, within your team members, within your organization. That kind of helps build trust as well. I wouldn't say that I have as many as leaders I had been with, maybe 50% did show that vulnerability just over the top of my head. Okay, I mean, but I do agree that authenticity does create a good positive culture and trust within the team.
There was this, I think this really illustrates the point, and it's not a business example, it's a personal example. So I had someone that was watching my kids while I was speaking at an event, and I came back, and as I was tying my kid's shoe, I'm kneeling down, right? Maybe put yourself in my shoes for a minute. I'm kneeling down, I'm tying my kid's shoe, and I said to this woman, I said, hey, I'd love to repay the favor sometime if you'd like to go, if you need some time off as a mom, and she works too, and you need to go get a manicure, get a massage, whatever you need to work outside of your home, I'm happy. I'd love to help. And this wasn't a tit for tat situation. I didn't feel like I needed to repay her in any way. I just was trying to be nice. And just for a second, put yourself in my shoes. She looked down at me as I'm tying my kid's shoe and she says, "Oh, I couldn't let you do that. I wouldn't want to be a burden." Now, what are you thinking?
I feel you start thinking about guilt, possibly.
Well, yeah, I think, oh, it was a burden. You see it as a burden that I asked you for help. So now
Exactly.
So did I ever ask her for help again? Never.
I don't think
Right? And so
so.
you can
Yep.
see how there's a breach of trust there of is it okay to need help? And if the leader doesn't model that, it's really hard for their people to trust it.
That is true, and sometimes I feel it is also in a way you project it. Maybe this person did not meant it what they said, but the way it is projected, it kind of creates that deficit of trust between you and the team. That's true.
I agree. I agree. Totally. Yeah, I think most of us are well-meaning. We're nice people, right? We don't wake up trying to be a jerk as leaders. I think we just sometimes don't realize the negative patterns we've got into and the way that they affect other people.
So moving on to some of the aspects that you mentioned earlier, right, about being valued, appreciated. How important do you feel, or what weightage do you feel you would give as opposed to non-monetary compensation versus monetary compensation in today's world, especially when majority of the Gen Z workforce is now entered into the market, is now entered into the industry, and now starting to work. And the reasons, I mean, this is like the reasons of we doing, we working versus the reasons of the Gen Zs working are different. Maybe for us it was more monetary than anything else. Maybe for Gen Zs it's a bit different. So what do you feel as this new workforce enters into the industry? The non-monetary aspects are more and more important these days.
That's a tough question. I don't know if I've ever been asked that, but I would say off the top of my head, what I think is I think it is becoming more important, yes, to this new generation, the non-monetary, the emotional, mental connection with their leader and their coworkers and just the overall work culture in general is becoming more of a priority as we've built more awareness around mental health in general. I mean, you think about we just came out of a pandemic and research Oracle did some really interesting research. Post-pandemic, it surveyed employees, and it's what they found is of the employees that they surveyed, 78% said they felt like the pandemic had severely impacted their mental health. 53% reported struggling with depression, 52% with anxiety, and then 32% with PTSD. So there are a lot of leaders looking around thinking, is this even my business? Like this isn't the old school methods. Not everyone, it's not an absolute, but in general, we weren't talking as much about mental health in the workplace, about the human connection aspect, about relationships that much. There was a much more of an attitude of put your head down, get your work done because I said so, just a very authoritative leadership style. And that's not working anymore. And yeah, I would say from what I've seen in the interviews I've done and the research I've seen, yeah, I don't think our Gen Z generation is putting up with as much that way because they are seeing the impact it's having on their mental health. And in part just because the conversation's more open now. There's more awareness around it. Therapy is much more accepted in general conversation, things like that. Yeah, I think they're asking for a higher standard of leadership. And there's people that bothers them, and there's people that are welcoming it. And I think both have valid arguments. I just think it is what it is. They are asking for more, and I think we can do better. I think there's a way to be even more successful as leaders, keeping in mind how to help up level people's mental health, because when our mental health is better, our performance is better at work. And so simply if you are having employees where they are feeling more emotionally and mentally safe at work, they're going to perform more and make you more money. So I think you can do it in a way that it's really a win-win for everyone. But short answer, yeah, I think that the non-monetary, the relationship, the culture, that is becoming more important than it used to be for sure.
That's an interesting take actually, because I can certainly vouch the shift I've seen in the past, I would say 5 to 6 years, wherein the employees or the team has become more empowered and democratic in the way they choose the kind of work they want to do, as opposed to more authoritative work like, okay, you do what I'm telling you to do. So
Mhm.
I do see the shift in the past 4 or 5 years, and you're bang on of that. So
Yeah, exactly. It's interesting, and it's good. It's a good thing. I think there's so much I used
Yeah.
to host a podcast called I See You, and there was an episode I did called Compassion Across Generations, and I think it's so good to remember to take the good from previous generations, previous leadership styles we've seen, take all the good from it and add to it. It doesn't need to be right or wrong, right? We don't need to get in that black and white thinking where it was all bad and this is all good. I think we have things to learn from each other if we can stay humble and growth mindset oriented to just get better and better as a generation.
Uh, so moving on to my next point here. So up-leveling people skills is another critical component you mentioned, right? So what specific skills should leaders focus on, you think, in order to improve team dynamics?
Well, we've discussed some of them, but some others we haven't talked
Yeah.
about. I think a big one, uh, well, I just want to resurface that one, the creating a culture where it's safe to ask for help, to have weakness,
Yeah.
that the story we tell isn't always just the success that we show that it's okay to struggle. I think if we want more innovation and creativity in our people, that's especially important that we provide an atmosphere where it is not just okay, but welcomed to take risks. So up-leveling our people skills that way, I think as once again, it has so much to do with modeling it, right? Modeling failure, which comes back to that vulnerability piece, but modeling trying new things. A big word I'm hearing in the corporate speaking atmosphere is curiosity, coming at things with curiosity instead of a story already in your head. Now, this is for any relationship, but certainly I think corporate is recognizing the influence it can have on building high performance teams to come at situations, at conversations, especially hard conversations with curiosity instead of an idea or a story that's already there. A way we can also stay curious, a really specific niched way to do this is when you're talking to make sure that you are asking questions before you are trying to relate, before you are trying to give advice, but ask as many questions as you need to fully understand the picture. Even if you came into the conversation with an idea in mind, with even a solution in mind, keep asking until you feel like you've understood enough that you can really make a well thought out response that you're understanding. So I think curiosity is a really big deal and will continue to be a big deal that people are asking speakers to come talk about because they're realizing how effective that is in creating high performance teams and cultures where people feel safe is coming to meetings and conversations with curiosity.
That's a very, very interesting take you have with respect to curiosity. One follow-up question on that. So, in your experience, talking with leaders, talking with mid-level leaders as well as high-level leaders, what do you feel like? I wouldn't ask you a ballpark number or a percentage, but do you feel that at a high level the curiosity is missing, or do you feel that the leadership and the industry is adopting uh, uh, to this? I wouldn't say major, but to this shift in the way you think.
I think it depends a lot on the corporation or company. I feel like the ones that are newer and really killing it and exploding tend to be pretty curious and pretty up to date on that. I also have spoken to quite a few associations with um, kind of some older leadership styles where I haven't seen it as much. Those have tended to be smaller businesses in general, but I would say the bigger ones that I've spoken to, uh, I think their leaders are pretty good at it already. And a lot of times they're asking me to even help their people do it more, but they'll come away still saying they learned something. But just as I watch them interact with their people, the fact that I think it says a lot when someone hires a keynote speaker to come in and talk about human connection in the workplace, that alone, I think shows a priority they put on people's mental health, right? And that they're being curious about this new wave of mental isolation and struggle we're seeing, especially post COVID, that they're trying to do things, they're trying to create interventions within their work environment to help people feel better at work, feel better, which means they'll feel better at home, which, that's just a cycle. They'll perform better, they'll make more money, all of that. That to me is an action of curiosity already, that they're saying, hey, let's bring in an outside expert or speaker. Let's get a training on this. Let's figure out how we can work with this. So a lot of the people that hire me, I feel like are doing a pretty good job with curiosity. Now, I think when I've spoken to associations more, which is more a spread of leaders in all different businesses, I think I've seen more of that be an aha for them, something they haven't thought about a lot. But these bigger ones, I think they're figuring it out. They're learning what works, and it's pretty cool to watch how it's affecting their what the ROI is on that, right? The return on investment of that, of them,
Hmm.
of getting curious of how are we going to make this culture better, of not just staying with the old ways, but being innovative and creative, and therefore other people do the same.
That's interesting actually, because I felt, uh, or at least I had the notion that the big corporation would take time to adapt, but it's the other way around, is what you say. So, yep,
Oh, and
that's
that's just a
interesting.
sampling of who I'm talking to. I haven't looked up any research on that of what I would
Hmm. Hmm.
expect.
Yeah.
There's a trend though, but here I live here in Utah. They call it Silicon Slopes here. We have a lot of kind of newer tech companies that
Hmm.
are we have Qualtrics, we have uh Motivosity, we have Awardco, we have a lot of tech companies here that are really exploding. Vivint Solar, um, and they have, I think all of them that I can think of, they have younger leaders too. They're newer companies with younger
Hmm.
leaders, and there's just a different style there that I've seen that I think they're seeing a lot of high performance from, and they're doing really well.
So before I wrap up, right, there was this one question in my mind which I typically had, and over these past years, I've always noticed, and this I believe most of the companies, all of the companies do these. They have these monthly or quarterly retreats where they take the team to a resort out of the city for a quick day or two retreat. Now, I initially always felt that it is always fun to just take a checkbox and say, okay, I've done it. What do you feel? Does it really affect team morale, or is it just like, okay, I mean, it's just a tick on the box?
I think it can be both. I think it that comes back a lot to the relationship between the leader and how they talk to their people. I think that two two organizations could take the same retreat or the same trip and have completely different feelings about it, and their loyalty to the company could be completely different depending on how they are treated in the day to day. If they are not treated well in the day to day, and then, okay, but here's your trip. I don't know that that's going to mean a lot as far as feeling like they're valued, like they're seen, appreciated, and trusted. I think that would feel more like, okay, we checked the box, we did it, now get back to work. I think it has everything to do with the day-to-day relationship they already have with the leader, of the purpose of why they would do that. So I think it can be incredibly effective, but once again, it comes back so much to the relationship between the leader and their followers. There's another interesting study that has shown that 75% of people say that the most stressful part of their job is their relationship with their immediate boss. So there's a reason why we keep speaking
Hmm.
leadership, because they just have so much influence. They have so much influence from the bottom coming down. And so I think retreats can be amazing. I don't think they're a band-aid if you mistreat your people. I don't think that they're going to make them stay by any means, or that they're going to feel like you are taking their mental health and their need to have some relaxed time and some play in their life. I don't think that's going to send the message if you aren't trying to connect with them normally. I mean, I think it could help some, right? I think any effort is good, but I think the day-to-day relationship and the way you treat your people in general, the systems and operations you have to make sure that people feel seen, appreciated, and trusted, are going to speak a lot more. And the retreat will then just amplify what you've already built.
Thanks so much, Julie, for joining us today. This has been a fantastic discussion.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Good to meet you.
And that's it for today's episode. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast for more insights on tips and leadership. Till next time, keep leading with purpose and authenticity. Have a great day.